morning, grinders. Welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender at Blender HD. You can find me there on Twitter. And it's Mondays. You know what we do on Mondays. Mondays with McCool. James McCool joins me, the co-author with me, on the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass. You can find at theoryofdfs.com. Hit those thumbs ups. I see you guys in the chat. Feel free to post your questions. We don't really got a slate today, right? And we got like what, 2 games? We got like a game at 5 and a game at 9, and I don't know what MLB is doing today. Just like whatever. You know, we got a couple of teams in. There you go. And then we're back to normal things on Tuesday, but we're still talking about DFS strategy. So post your questions in the chat. James, I know you're continuing your bankroll challenge. I did fine with my bankroll this past week. Last week I had a second place. You know, I've been collecting a lot of steak knives this season in MLB.
I will say that 10K is probably a little more than one steak knife.
Right,
I have a pretty nice steak knife. It wasn't $10,000.
Right, but first and second is 25,000, 10,000. So yeah. But I've been collecting a lot of 8th places and 11th places and 7th places and finally, okay, at second. Okay, I'll take the 10K. I'll add it. So I updated my rotor tracker the last time, last week when that happened. So I'm still decent. I mean, from an MLB, if I just sort by like so far this year, if I go to MLB, like it's barely right. I mean, it's barely like that $10,000 win put me into like the profit, but like not by much, right? As of the last time that I uploaded, which was last week, up 1,600 on the season in general. Because like cash games, I've been like pretty much hovering around break even, and GPP, you know it. You posted it on Twitter even. Your GPP graph is going to look like down, big spike, down, big spike. And your goal is to just survive long enough, play well enough, and survive long enough so that you get those top 1% finishes. Instead of being 38th place, they're first, second, third place. And a lot of what I do with diversification, what top players do when they play multiple lineups is sometimes your season is not necessarily predicated on the big spikes, but on how to limit the the downward swinging slopes. So how since the last time we talked, since last Monday we had Grinders live, like how's the bankroll challenge going for you?
You know, super not great since the last time we talked, but that happens. And it's something like this is really important to talk about too, because everybody in this industry wants to talk about winning. Everybody in this industry wants to talk about screenshot life and like, oh yeah, look at these big numbers. And you know, I won 30K on $17,000 in entry fees, but like not enough people talk about the losing streaks and talk about the downswings. So my last big hit was on the 15th of May. So like 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. At that point, I was up over 600%. I was at a $3,400 bankroll. Since then, I have had two winning days. 2 in 3 weeks. One was a 3% profit, and that one I took 8th place. So that one I made $173. One of them was where's that other one? 0.37% profit. That one I probably min cashed a whole bunch of lineups. So since then I am down $1,400 in the bankroll challenge with a lot of zeros and a lot of full losing weeks, because the way that I play, I'm either going to do very, very well with a whole bunch of lineups up near that top, or I'm just going to get trash canned. And I'm just going to lose a lot. So over this time period, you know, the first couple of weeks where I had those hits, that was really nice. But I haven't had those since. It has been down, and just a steady decline. But because I'm sticking to good bankroll management, because I'm not going over my 3% threshold, because I'm not going over what I should be playing, And a lot of time I'm sitting somewhere between the 2 and 3% threshold right now, because I know that I'm on a down streak right now. I'm not like going bankrupt. I'm still at a $2,000 current bankroll, which is still 4 times what I started with. I'm still at a 360% ROI. So, the down streaks happen. That they happen a lot. Ricky D has talked about $1 million downswing. There are other pros that are very, very good that talk about their downswings, but not enough. So these kind of things happen. And especially, this last week, you said that you've been doing well. You diversify and you put together your lineups, accepting a bit more chalk than I do. And the chalk has just been crushing for this last, probably about 2 weeks, I would say. There's only been a couple days where the chalk didn't do well enough to keep people towards those tops. So when the chalk is hitting, I'm going to be doing badly, and I just accept that as the way that I play. So that's just kind of what I tell everybody when I'm playing through. I know that I'm going to have literal weeks where I might not make a profit on a single slate. So it's just something that you accept and you sit through and you keep playing the way that you do. And you look for those top 1% finishes, those top 5, 6, 7th place finishes. And hopefully you hit a first place on an extra double RBI in the 10th inning.
Right. If you take a look at my rotor tracker, I just sorted by MLB 2021 GPP by days, just literally the days that I'm playing, and just say losing day. Look at all these losing days. Then like April 21st, $3,100 profit. Right. So that was a spike, a small spike, but something. Then up, I have some like up 200, up 100. But there are days. Here's April 28th, down 1,200. Right. A lot of these days are like down a couple of hundred. Right. So it's not like look, it says like wagered 980, lost 119.
Mm-hmm.
Wagered 1248, lost 658. So that's like 50%. Wagered 631, lost 274. But then it's like here's plus 426, here's plus 329. Then the last June 1st, profit 9831, right? $10,000 minus all the other entries and everything like that. So in graph form, like you can see here, down, spike, down, like a little whatever, and you're gonna see more of this type of thing. But obviously, I started out this season losing, so just getting the spike up to the green is just like down, again. Oh, and then that 10,000 got me into, as of June 1st, in GPP, my profit is plus $4,072. Now this is probably going to go down, and then spot like when's that next one going to go? So, just to show, I'm showing like we're showing our actual.
Yeah.
This is our actual. I'm showing you my road. This is how I analyze my play. But
and it's funny too, because remember a couple weeks ago I said, yeah, I'm probably not going to have another hit until like the middle of June. And here we are, like loss, and then hopefully this week or next week maybe I'm able to have another hit. But yeah, like you said, it just loses until you have a hit.
So if we take a look at what I do, I think the number one thing that people have struggles with is like there's a loss, big spike, loss is like normal.
Yeah.
Right. But going a month downswing of losses is also normal if you don't play well. Right. Typically the difference between a good player, long-term good player, and a long-term bad player, the graph just doesn't have those big spikes. So especially when these big spikes only happen every so often, how are people going to know whether or not am I playing bad, or am I playing well and running bad, or am I playing bad? Right? That's the number one thing. I think if your graph is more even, you're probably playing too safe. Right? If you're playing a lot of lineups more lineups that min cash, but not many lineups that come in like the top 1% of contests. Like that's one way. But a lot of people will be like, well, I've been playing for a month and it's just down. Am I playing well? Can you take a look at my lineups? the way that I judge, to me, the best way to judge is by finishing position. Like I've said multiple times on the show before, that the variance towards the top is going to be just dramatic. Like the difference in the last like 10 or 20 points of your lineup is, you can't control that. So like my goal is to just get as many lineups into the top 1%, top 0.5%, top 0.1%, depending on the size of the contest that I can. And then whatever happens from there, it's whatever. So I can only judge. So I go onto RotoTracker, I look at my like 1% buckets. Like this is what I have currently. Not as asymmetrical as I would want, but still in the top 1%, 1.7% of my lineups. Right? Now the top 2%, 1.2. So I'm still above. This line, this red line that's here, shows like above average. Right? If everything was even, right? Think of this chart as if everyone in the contest was even and everything came out evenly, you would score 1% of your lineups in the top 1%. You would score 10% of your lineups in the top 10%, right? Everything with this line would be flat. Like the bars would go right up to the line. Like everything would kind of be flat. So this means that I'm in the top 1%, I'm getting way more than my fair share, 1.7%. Now with the rake, your goal in this top 1% is like 1.2%, like breaks you even.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now 1.2% could also mean that, yeah, you scored in the top 1%, 1.2% of the time, but you also got 3 wins in those scenarios. That's running good. Right? So like the higher this number is, the higher this bar is, and the less amount of first place, second place, third place finishes that you've had, that means you're playing well and running bad. The lower this bar is, if let's say your finishing position for first place for top 1% was 0.8%, 0.8%, but you've won a GPP for $100,000, to me that's you played. You're not playing that well, but you ran good, right? Is this how you judge that dichotomy of, am I playing bad or playing good and getting unlucky or getting too lucky? Is this what you do?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. And that's what I tell other people they need to be doing as well. You basically want to have, I usually aim for like 1.5 to 2% in the top 1%. Over a longer field. And I think that the other important part of that is that barbell structure, where you're either having lineups ending up in those top areas or lineups ending up in the bottom areas. So I look for something that's more parabolic rather than just like a steady slope upward. Because
I want to push back on that. Like in theory, if you're playing well, this graph should look parabolic in some fashion, meaning that, because remember, you're in GPP, you're looking to increase the variance of your lineups,
right?
So you're more likely to come in first or last, right? Either this team does really well or really badly. If this pitcher does really bad or really, so it's more likely to look like a parabolic curve.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the reverse of a bell curve.
Yep.
Right. So you have less in the middle, but more on the bottoms and the tops. The reason why you're not going to see a parabolic curve is because depending on the contest that you play, if you play stronger contests, you're more likely to see parabolic curves because you're not facing 10 to 20% of the lineups that are just so bad that they don't even do well. Sure. Like on average. But in large field GPPs, like this bottom, it's very hard. I mean, I find over the course of, I mean, if I take this out for the whole year, for my whole lifetime, like I go by the entire lifetime I play, it looks like a tilted one.
Yeah.
Right? If you look here, like my top 1% finish is 1.8%, but my bottom 1% finish is 0.3%. Like it comes up from there. But that's primarily because the last 10% of contests, especially when you're playing the larger field stuff where casual money gets in and stuff like that, are just so bad that even my worst lineup is coming in like in the top 15th percentile, right? The bottom, in 85%. Like that's why you see this little hump over here. Like it's still beating like the guys that like have such low projected, low,
Right.
horrible lineups.
Right.
So I think that whole parabolic nature of your finishing position graph is a misnomer. Is a misnomer in practice. In theory, that's what it should look like.
Sure.
But
Sure.
you have to realize that your worst lineup may still, even playing 150, your 150th lineup that comes in, with 27 fantasy points in baseball, still may not be. There's still maybe 1,000 lineups that you still beat.
Yeah.
In that, because it's still better than, the lineups that you look at and you go, how did anyone have the people that aren't in the lineup, pitchers, a pitcher combination that's like, why'd you play both of these pitchers that both got -8, right? That are 1% owned for a reason, because they were horribly projected and you played the stacks against them. So, I mean, does your graph look more parabolic than mine?
It's closer. Yeah. I mean, I have kind of like weird dips, but most of my lineups are either in the top 5, 10, 15 or the bottom 90, 95. So I'm still like beating that 5% of people that are just like building lineups with their eyes closed. Like, yeah, I'm not going to be in the bottom 100th percentile, but I'll be down there in like the bottom 90, 95th percentile with a large chunk of my lineups. But I mean, I'm still like 6.2% top 5%. I mean, like I'm still well over that. I'm 1.3% top 1%. So those kind of like thresholds that we want to hit, I'm still up there. It's just, I hardly ever have lineups that finish somewhere between the 20th and 30th percentile. And I'm looking at it right now. Like my 25th percentile is my second lowest.
Yeah, but that's the cash line. I mean, that's the min cash line essentially.
Right. Exactly. And so, but I don't care about that. And then I jump up a little bit between 40 and 45%. So like it kind of goes high and then low and then a little bit of a bump and then low and then back up a little bit, because I mostly want to avoid those like 50th to 25th percentile lineups. Like I don't care about those really. So I'm really trying to avoid those when I build, but I do have a pretty parabolic graph over my lifetime.
Right. Actually, if I go over my entire MLB GPP history, it's only top 1% is at 1.4%. So actually, this season, I'm actually running better than I have in the past, which is weird to say because I've also banked 3 MLB GPPs in the past. So maybe I got lucky in the more lucky. Like 1.4 is still higher than. That's still fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 1.4. I mean, you're still going to be beating the rake on that. I don't think that 1.4 is bad. I think that anywhere between 1.5 and 2% is really what you want to aim for that top 1%. And that's hard to do. And that's really, really hard to do. You got to build a lot of good lineups in order to end up in that area. And I think that the one thing that I would say that people need to avoid is having that flat, that kind of like completely flat across the board. Like you're hitting everything just in a straight line. Like it needs to be either parabolic or it needs to be like a downward slope or something. Like you need to make sure that you are having the majority of your lineups in that top 5% range, or well, more in the top 5% range than 5%. Like you really need to be aiming for that. And if you are having like this really flat, because I talked to a subscriber a couple days ago, I was looking at his roto tracker and I was talking to him, and he was just like flat all the way across. Like it just looked like a sidewalk. And I'm like, dude, you just like, the reason why you're not finding success is because you're too diversified. Like you're just playing it super, super safe and you're hitting everything across the board. And like, you don't have a core. Like you can't, if you even hit on one thing right, you don't have enough combinations of that one thing, of that one circumstance in order to put yourself up in there in that top 5%, top 1%. So you're getting a lot of like 15% and 30% and 40%. And like you can't cover all your bases. That's such a huge.
Well, you're also losing money to the rake in that instance.
Yeah.
If your finishing position graph looks like a sidewalk, that means you've lost money to the rake.
Yeah, that's all. Like if you're doing that, then you're likely a -6 or like a -6 to 8% player across your lifetime, and that's because it's all going to the rake. Like that's just where your money is going.
We have some questions in the chat. Feel free to post them. I mean, this is what we talk about on Mondays, general DFS stuff, especially on a day where there's really nothing going on. Lou Sinus asks, what contest are you playing on DK with the $2,000 bankroll?
So right now,
I mean, I'm assuming. I mean, you're doing $500 to 5,000, but I mean, you're in that $2,000.
Yeah, so now I'm in 2,000, so I have $61 to play today. That is not quite enough to max the $4, so I probably won't be in that. I'll probably just put 50 into the $1 and play with $50 today. I prefer to be able to, like, if I'm going to play the $4.20 max, I'd like to be able to max it. And since I don't have the money to do that, then it just kind of feels weird to me and it feels like an awkward amount. I could play 10 in the $4 and 10 in the mini max, but I'm mostly sticking to the $4 and the mini max right now. And I have a lot of people ask me why I don't play in the 20 max $1, and it's because the payoff isn't good enough. Where the way that I build lineups, we were just talking about how my graph looks parabolic. If I build any set of lineups for like any given GPP, the mini max or the $4 or the 15, whatever, I know that if I build lineups for these contests, if I am going to take down whatever contest I'm in, it's very likely that I will also take down a contest with more players because the way that I build is super volatile. So being in the $1.20 max with a $850 or a $1,000 to first prize when the mini max has $2,500 to first, like I'm losing expected value over the long term by playing the 20 max since I'm just going to be building to take down something that is larger anyway. So I play the mini max and the $4.20 max when I have the bankroll for it, but I'm going to need another hit before I can get back into the $4.
Right, and to me, I can't even see the mini max. So I mean,
no, because
I don't even have the option of doing that.
Yeah,
like the $4.20 max is the smallest contest that I can play.
Right.
To me, that's the. I mean, but obviously, I'm playing way more than you. Like when I play on FanDuel, I'm playing 150 lineups.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and your bankroll is 10 times what mine is right now. So like you can absolutely afford to be maxing those contests over on FanDuel.
Danny Lewis says this may sound like nonsense, but do you reserve before entering? And if so, how long in advance? For GPP, just you build a dummy lineup and then you enter as whatever amount. I already, like maybe not for today, but like by the time I do this show in the morning, like I already have all my entries, not my cash, because obviously cash games start, double ups, respawn, and 50-50s on FanDuel. You have to re-enter, do your head-to-heads and stuff like that. But from a GPP's perspective, like the contests come out the night before. I look on both sites and go, what am I doing tomorrow? And I go, okay, FanDuel, Draftkings, you had the $18 garbage bat flip, whatever the hell they call it. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to max enter that. And then it's like, okay, let's look at FanDuel. Okay, it sucks also, but it's $5.55. And then I put in my 150 entries or whatever the hell it is. And I make one line. I make one lineup. I put it into everything, and then I'll sort it out in the CSV later. So like, to me for GPP, like just whatever you plan on playing, just put it in, like, and don't reserve. Just build a dummy lineup. It makes it so much easier when it comes to like uploading and sorting out your CSV. I know FanDuel sometimes have issues. Every time I ever heard people have issues with, I don't know, I have to replace one lineup by one lineup, one at a time, or just I've never reserved entries ever on any site. I build a dummy lineup, meaning just I go through, just even if you're going through and just sliding your finger and picking whoever's the first guy that fits within, it's still better than having nothing in there. And especially when nothing, if it locks with nothing in it, you got nothing. Like you have no one in there. DraftKings, plenty of people have, I tried, I got a CSV error and I have all reserved entries and now it locked and now I can't replace them with anyone. Well, why didn't you build a dummy lineup? Like to me, I build the lineup first and then I enter. And if I'm playing on like DraftKings or FanDuel, if I'm playing like one lineup for cash and then I have one lineup that I will upload all the stuff to, I just have two different lines. I build a lineup and then I change the pitcher. So it's like, okay, my Trevor Bauer lineup is my cash lineup, and my Walker Buehler lineup is my GPP lineup. I enter all the GPPs into that lineup. I enter all my cash games into the other lineup. And then when I download the CSV, you know what I do? I sort by the pitcher column, right? Because the Trevor Bauer will be here and the Walker Buehler will be there. I sort by whatever. And then in the CSV, I clear out my cash lineup from the CSV. So I remove it completely just so I don't override it. I'm going to do that in manually. And there you go. Yeah, I have my 150 lineups in Excel, and there you go. And then I have that like minimized on my second screen. It's like, okay, I'm going to need that, 5 hours from now or whatever, and build and upload and whatever. I mean, is that a similar process to you?
Yeah, I mean, I build dummy lineup and I just reg everything that I'm going to play early. And you have to do it early this year because for whatever reason, the contests are just way too small this year for baseball.
Well, because they think people are playing basketball more.
Yeah, they're shoving 50K prize pools into a 2-game slate on NBA. So it's so silly, man. Like maybe they could afford to have an $8 150 max if they would just stop dumping money into NBA during the playoffs. But I digress. Anyway, you have to reg early. Most of the time, yeah, you can even do it the night before, like Blender just said. Like you can look at Draftkings, you can look FanDuel, kind of try to figure out what you want to play the next day. If you're using a bankroll tracker, like I gave all my subscribers a blank bankroll tracker so they can track things the same way that I am. You already know how much you're going to be able to play the next day, so you can just build a dummy lineup, register your contest the night before, and then as you're doing research, just build your lineups and then upload them. The issue that I think that a lot of people run into is that they don't really know how to change the lineups after they have already put them in. So a mistake that a lot of people make is they'll register all their contests beforehand, and then like on DraftKings, you actually have to go in and edit your entries. So what a lot of people will do is they'll run on lineup HQ or whatever lineup builder they use, and they'll export their lineups and they'll just go upload. And they'll upload them onto DraftKings. And they're like, oh, well, I'm set. Dude, you're not set. You're screwed now because you don't know that you need to go edit your lineups. You just still have your dummy in there. So now you're screwed. And I, of course, wouldn't know that from personal experience of the one time that I did it when I had a dummy lineup. I definitely have never done that, but other people have done that for sure.
Well, you got to put the lineups in the template of the DraftKings template.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I personally have never done it when I had a dummy lineup that didn't have Eric Bledsoe in it, but I think that a lot of people have done it probably.
To me, it's easy. I don't know. When people have problems with that, I got Excel. I'm bringing up Excel right now.
It is really, really easy. Like it's not hard.
Cutting and pasting. What's so hard? You download the lineups, you cut and paste them in the square that it should be. You look at the columns, you line them up, and you press Control V, and you're done, and save it. That's the mess up that I've made before.
Yeah,
I think I've done it twice where I've cut and paste and forgotten to save.
Oh, hilarious!
And then upload the CSV.
Yeah,
and then when lock hits, I go, why do I still have all 150? Why is that?
Yeah,
I see it in my. It's like, no, I didn't say. So I just uploaded the same CSV over again. Right. So like that I make the mistake. So actually, what I do, there's a message in Excel. It seems so stupid. That's like it always gives you like when you save like a possible like compatibility error or something, like a little bar up there, depending on what version of Excel you're using. That only happens when you save.
Yep.
So like I literally could choose to turn that message off. I leave it on because that shows that like confirms to me.
That's because you're using like Excel 46 or something.
I'm using an old version of Excel.
Yeah, that's because you're still using the same version of Excel that shipped with the first H1 Hummer that was sent over in World War II. Because you don't upgrade things.
Alex Santi has a good question. Do you set sort filters in your Excel page? I want to touch on this. Obviously, if I'm playing like on FanDuel and I'm just playing the main GPP for 150, I'm not, because they're all what does it matter what the order is of anything?
Right.
When I'm playing multiple contests, because remember, I play all uniques. So if I'm playing on DraftKings, I may be playing the 121 single entry. I may be playing 1 or 2 lineups in the $88 contest. I may be playing 1 entry into the $12 single entry, 1 entry into the $40 single, and then I'm playing the 20 entries into the $4.20 max, and then maybe like 80 entries into the main whatever bat flip. At that point, if I'm playing 80 entries, it's probably only like $8 to $12 on that day. So then it's like, okay, well, how do I decide what lineup goes into which? Well, I go by field size. Now, on DraftKings, there's no column for field size. Like, you can't sort by field size. But typically, like I know what the contests are. So I'll sort by entry fee. Because typically the 121 is going to be the smallest field. Then the 88 is going to be the next smallest field. Then, I mean, it goes down from there. So I'm going to be importing my lineups and cutting and pasting. And I'm going to be sorting by either projection or by ownership. So obviously my chalkier lineups are more likely going to go into the single entry stuff, because how much leverage do I need? Do I need to be playing my 5-man pirate stack with the contrarian pitching combination in the 121 single entry? Do I need to get that leverage? No, I don't. That's going to end up in the large field stuff. So like I sort by entry fee. Now, obviously, like there's a $12 single entry. I may cut and paste the line, so I put them in order like that. But typically, I just sort by entry fee, and then sometimes sometimes what I'll do, I'll put my single entries up first, and then I'll put like all the large field. But in order to make it a little bit more random, like when I paste that in, I'll either randomize, or I'll just indiscriminately put rows of my, like the $4.20 max, like in the middle of everything. So it's a weird way of doing it. It's because it doesn't matter to me. Like the lineups for the 20 max and the lineups for the 150 max are going to be the same types of lineups anyway. But if I sort by ownership only when I import, like that means my lowest owned lineups are going to be all in the 20 max, right? I'm not going to have any diversification specifically in the 20 max. So if that low owned stack lineup comes in, I'm going to come in like 1st, 4th, 7th, 10th in the 20 max, when I could have came in, 1st in the 20 max and 3rd in the 150 max, and I would have made more money. So that's how I sort my Excel file for that. But it's a little bit more complex because I'm making all unique lineups. If I was just playing a 150 set, and it's like, well, the top 1 is going to be in single entry, the top 3 will be in the 3 max, the top 20 will be, like, you don't have to do that, because you're just cutting and pasting over. You're just doing 150 set to begin with, and you just order it that way and just put the lineups the way you want.
Yeah, that's a really interesting, and like that's a really good piece of advice, because I know a lot of people that that they'll ask, well, why did so-and-so pro play this lineup in the 20 max? It's like, well, they have 300 lineups. Like that lineup is one lineup out of a massive portfolio of lineups, where like what you are seeing in their single entry, like they very likely just have that as part of their portfolio, and that is their safest lineup that they decided to enter into the single entry contest. Like they have it sorted that way. So I think that's an important thing to know. The randomization is important, I think, when you are talking about entering a whole bunch of different kinds of contests, especially if you have, like, I don't know, if you're maxing both the 33 and the 150, and there aren't that many people that do that, but when they do, you want to be able to mix and match those lineups up a little bit and not just sort by ownership. But I do like that concept of just sorting by ownership if you're doing all uniques and you have a whole bunch of different contests that you're entering. I
just want to make sure that I mean, the main difference between the lineups is going to be the leverage that I have.
Yeah.
Now, I think that's awesome. The thing is that I primarily am building leverage. All of the lineups that I build are lineups that can win a 150 max large field contest. Yeah, because I don't mind that in single entry, because in single entry it gets even more condensed. So like my highest cumulative owned lineup is like typically contrarian even for 120, the single entry.
Yeah.
But it's not like stupid. Like it's not like stupid owned too low owned. Like Like I don't need to get that stupid. Like it's not going to be, oh, I'm playing the chalk, picture chalk, stack chalk, one off. Like I don't have any lineup that looks like that. So like I don't even have to worry. But if for instance, my highest cumulative owned lineup is 165 and my lowest is like 80. Like why would I want to put an 80 in the one? Like if I win that, I could have, like that lineup could win the 150 max.
Yeah.
For 50,000. Like winning 5,000 in the 121 single entry seems like if I win with that lineup, I'm going to win by like 45 points. And then it just seems useless. Like that would have been more useful in another contest.
There's somebody that won the, I think it was the mini, I don't remember what it was. It's that somebody won a contest yesterday with 270. Oh, it was the $18. They won with 270. The next closest person had 236. 230 in the large field, in like the biggest contest on DraftKings. That is insanity. That is crazy to lap the field like that. But yeah, and that goes back to what I said earlier, where the lineups that I build, I know that the lineups that I build, like if I take down the $1 20 max, or if I take down a 20 max contest, very, very likely that I would have taken down the same contest in the 150 version of it. So there's no reason for me to enter those lower ones if I'm on this bankroll challenge. Like it's just wasting EV. And especially because like the way that I play, one of the reasons why I don't enter a lot of single entry stuff when I'm doing things like this is because I'm always fading the top owned stack. Like every single day I'm fading the top owned stack. So automatically I don't have like that. I have so much leverage for single entry that I really don't feel the need to be entering single entry very often. The only time that I do it is if I'm entering the 121, if I'm just like deciding to kind of play around with my own money on that day. Or like the 111 the other day was a really good contest on DraftKings with 100K at first. So I entered that. But when it comes to single entry stuff, I just prefer to play a larger field contest because the lineups that I build are better for larger fields.
I mean, but it's the same exact thing that I do. I mean, it's right. It's the same exact reason. It's part of my portfolio, but not the main thing of what I do. And this is why, like Eric Chiasson asks, do you play the same core in all your lineups? Like I don't. Like if you listen to the Theory of DFS, go download it, go buy it, theoryofdfs.com, or you listen to or watch this show. There's no such thing as a core. There's no such thing as players. Like I don't play players. I play lineups. So like there's no such to me. There's no such thing as a core. There may be players that are being under-owned, and I'm playing more of them. But there's no like I think these 4 people are going to do well. I'm going to play them in 80% of my lineups. Like that doesn't exist. There's no such, to me, core plays don't exist. I'm playing lineups. I'm building. If just so happens this guy appears in 16 lineups, then that's how the math works out, and that's what it is. And I'm typically, for batters, not playing on a normal size slate, more than like 20. I'm not playing of any batter more than like 25% of my lineups to begin with, right? So it's just whatever fits in. Whatever fits in. That's what the projections say, right? I make the strategic decisions of what stacks are under-owned, what stacks are over-owned, what pitchers are over-under-owned, right? And try to build lineups cumulatively that way, or by ownership product, technically. And then pair them together and make as many combinations that I can of plus EV lineups while still being diversified, that I'm not just like going to go on a 50K downswing for no reason, right? Like that, but that's all dependent on the size of your bankroll, right? For me, I play a lot to protect my bankroll and sacrifice potential upside because I have a bigger one. When you have a smaller one that you could replenish, if you have $1,000 bankroll and you have a discretionary income, like feel free to be as risky as you want. Don't be diversified. People do it the opposite way. It always amazes me. The smaller bankroll you have, the more risk you could take. Just like the younger you are, the more risk you could take in investments, because you have so much time horizon to make mistakes. If you're just starting to invest and you're 52 years old, like you don't have time for your stocks to dip 20% and then come back over the next 10 years, right? You're gonna be retired by then. But when you're 22 years old, you want to take a shot and put 15%, 20% of your net worth into some, made up currency or something like that, and go like, if 20% of your net of your portfolio goes to zero, well, you're 10 years from now, well, you're 32 years old. Like you could, by the time you're 60, 65, you're going to make that up, but just in compounding on your better investments, that you're perfectly fine. So to me, the diversification is more of a factor for like the difference between me and you, James, because I play higher volume and with a larger bankroll. I'm more likely to protect and not embrace all of the variance if I'm going to play that many lineups by, the Braves are going to be chalk today, but I may have 4 or 5 Braves lineups. I don't have 0, right? You will have just 0 because you're playing, 10, 15 lineups and you have a small, and what's the worst thing that happens? You lose $60, right?
Right.
What's the worst thing that happens? For me, I lose $1,000. Like, and that could add up over time. And then by the end of the month, it's like, well, I'm down 20 to 25,000 on the month, trying to find, diamonds in the rough. And it's like, dude, if I would have just included some more chalkier line, because I could still play the chalk stack just with, obviously contrarian pieces of it. But you're more likely to just say, I'm just on that type of slate where the Braves are chalk and this SB Corbin Burns plus Braves plus Austin Meadows is like the chalk build. You're more likely to just go, I'm just going to X all 3 of those things out.
Oh, not all 3. I'm not insane.
Okay, but you're more likely to build lineups that only include 1 of the 3 rather than 2 of the 3. Like, I won't play any lineups with 3 of the 3, like the chalk pitcher, chalk
Right.
stack, chalk one-off, but I'm more likely to play a lot of, they have 2 of those in it.
So
you're more likely to play just like 1 of those in it.
Yeah, typically what I'm going to do, I don't really care so much about diversifying a pitcher because I think that pitcher projections have come a long way. And I think my pitcher projections are very good. And I'm very, I trust them a lot. And the volatility is less so at pitcher. So like Corbin Burns projecting for 32, Jacob deGrom projecting for 34. Like I don't have a reason to fully fade these players. So I'm going to be different at my stacks. In that example where it's like Corbin Burns and then like, I don't know, maybe they mispriced Joe Musgrove and he's only 7,100 or something like that. And then the Braves are chalk. I'm going to X out the Braves, but there are going to be lineups that I have with Corbin Burns and Joe Musgrove. It's just that I'm probably going to have them with a lower owned like Rangers stack or like a Dodgers stack or something like that, where like I can still get my leverage over with the bats. Or if I like at the top of my models, if the Braves have like a 14% chance of being the number 1 scoring team on the slate and the next best is like 9% or something, I don't really want to give up that 5% top win equity. I just don't. So I will maybe have some lineups with them and I'll fade Corbin Burns or I'll fade Joe Musgrove or something like that. I usually try to have like, I will max out at 2. So I am like you on that. I just think that the way that I build out, I am more likely to have 1 of 3 than 2 of 3, where you are more likely to have 2 of 3 than 1 of 3.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm right. I'm more likely to, there'll be some lineups that you look at and you go, wow, you really didn't get off the board there. It's like, well, I got off the board enough, right?
In other spots. Yeah.
Right. And right. You'll see, it's like, you played on FanDuel. I'll play a 4-3-1 and it'll be like, well, it seems like you played the chalk Astros and the chalk Royals together. How is that enough leverage? I go, well, I played the chalk Astros, but I played Chas McCormick instead of Alex Bregman at third base, and I played Hunter Dozier at third base, who wasn't as owned in the Royals stack. So you take a look at the total lineup, and it's like, yeah, I did use 2 of the top 3 chalkiest teams, but I didn't, and both of the stacks did not include one of the chalkiest hitters of the stack. Mm-hmm. So the total lineup, and then the one-off is like a 3% owned Nick Castellanos or something like that. And the pitcher is the chalk pitcher. And you look at the lineup and you go, this doesn't seem all that different, but it really is. Like from the team perspective, you go, well, it's Houston, Kansas City, 2 chalkiest teams. I'm like, yeah, but look at the total ownership of the lineup. This is a contrary. This still has enough leverage to win, right? Castellanos gets a double home run game, and I get the right hitters of the two stacks that aren't part of the chalk version of that stack. If you can play Houston, and it's like, oh, I'm going to play Altuve, Bregman, Correa, Alvarez on like FanDuel. It's like, yeah, that's the chalk stack, and you're going to pair that. You're going to try to pair that with Merrifield, Santana, Perez, and whoever, and Benintendi or something, and like yes, that 4-4, like that's the chalk, right?
And because you're on FanDuel, you can also afford that with DeGrom and have money left over.
Right, and have money, right, exactly, and still have money left over. So instead of doing that, I'm building a lineup which is a 4-3-1. Instead of playing Bregman at third, I'm still playing Altuve, Correa, right? Altuve, Correa, Alvarez, Tucker, right? Something like that, or Chas McCormick. And then in the Royals side, you're playing Dozier, Perez, no Merrifield because your second base spot is filled, and Michael Taylor, right? At 1.8% owned. Even though the Royals, like all the other Royals, are like 12 to 15% owned. Michael A. Taylor batting 8th, 1.8% owned. And then a Nick Castellanos one-off, 4,000, because you could afford it. Why not? And still have Garrett Cole or whoever in your lineup, right? And it's okay. And then you'd look and you go 4-3, 2 chalk, like that's why we go on and on and on again about it's not about players, it's not about teams, it's about lineups. You're playing lineups. So when you say, oh, you can't play the chalk stack and you can't play the chalk stack, like it's all together as one lineup. As long as you're able to take out ownership and not give up like boatloads of projection, you could build your lineups any way you want. So you could play, if the Braves are chalk that day, it's like, well, I'm going to just X out all the Braves. It's like, why can't you play lineups that are the Braves but not Acuna? Right? Why can't you play Freeman, Swanson, Riley, Adrianza, and you don't have Acuna in the lineup, right? But all of the chalk Brave stacks, Acuna's like 28% owned, but you don't have him. And it doesn't mean Acuna has an 0-for-5 game, but he only puts up, like, let's say he has 12 points in a Braves 8-run win with, and Adrianza has a home run and 3 RBIs. And he, as part of the stack, he's only 2.8% owned, right? Because everyone is playing the top 4 guys, right? Well, you're good. Who cares that you played the Braves? Or don't play Freeman, don't play Swanson, don't play Riley, don't play whatever. Ozuna we're probably never going to see again. But you don't play that. Build a lineup like that. And once you start piecing away that ownership, or play the top 4 guys, play Acuna, that's the chalkiest stack in the world. Acuna, Freeman, Riley, Swanson, and you play that alongside the 1% owned Tigers.
Yeah.
Right? You play Akil Baddoo and whoever and Nico Goodrum, and now you're fine. And you look at it and someone, oh, I can't believe you played the chalk at Brave stack. They're like, well, look at the lineup as a whole. And then once you play that 1% Tigers stack, you play the chalk pitcher, and who cares? Because if the Tigers put up 6 runs and those 3 guys do well, yeah, you could win, even with the chalk going off. Or you don't play the 1% owned stack with the Braves. You play the 5% owned Red Sox, let's say, on that day. We're 5% owned. So not like low owned, but not high owned. And then in that lineup, you don't play the chalk pitcher. You play, 8% owned Sandy Alcantara or something like that. And okay, now your lineup is fine. Right? So like and then people will ask, well, which one do I do? Because I always piece this out into like chalk pitcher, chalk stack, chalk one-offs. Like that's, to me, those are the 3 categories in MLB DFS when you play GPPs. Like chalk one-offs are typically like, the $2,800 Austin Meadows for no apparent reason, right? Like that type of thing. Or like the chalk piece of the chalk stack, like Acuna or something like that. The thing is, you shouldn't play all 3.
The rule of 3. I wrote about that. In my Bankroll challenge. Just stick to the rule of 3, man. You can't have all 3. Avoid one of the three. And on FanDuel, I think that I agree with you that it is pitcher, main stack, and one-offs. And on DraftKings, I say that it's the SP1, the SP2, and the main stack. Right. Those are the three on DraftKings.
There's also chalk one-offs also because DraftKings will have that cheap. Jorge Soler is 22% going for no apparent reason, because he's 2,600 in batting cleanup or something.
Sure, but the two pitchers in the main stack, those are the main things that I focus on DraftKings because I mean there is always just huge chalk on one of those or on all three of those things. It doesn't even matter. Like we're even seeing on 12-game slates, we're seeing Garrett Cole at 45% owned. We're seeing like the Rays in a good spot at 30% owned on 10+ game slates. So I think that on DraftKings, people are kind of forcing those things in, even though nobody wants stack anymore. But on DraftKings, I do think it's SP1, SP2, and the main stack. But I totally agree with your thoughts. Where like as long as you are getting different at one of those three things, one of the main three leverage pieces on any given slate, you can build lineups that are including other pieces of it. And that's honestly something that I need to be a little bit better about in my play when I am maxing, when I'm doing like 50 or more lineups. I need to be able to look at things and say, okay, well, it's fine to take the Braves. In my head, I don't want to, but it's fine to take the Braves so long as I'm avoiding the top overall SP1. And that's something that is a little bit of a leak in my game that I can admit, where I get a little bit too contrarian with it. And I should probably knock that off. But overall, like people,
I mean, I could see like James, I could see you saying, like in this example where the Braves are chalk, as a team, saying I'm going to build 20 lineups with no Brave stacks, but I could have Braves one-offs.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I need to make sure, and I say that also in my Discord to my subs. I preach it, but it's one of those things where it's like do as I say, not as I do. Where I say, yeah, you can use the Braves or you can use like the Rays as a secondary stack. They're a good secondary stack. Just make sure that you're not going buck wild on them and building out a full stack on them, because if you build the secondary stack, then you can still have some of the pieces and you can avoid some of the higher owned pieces as well, but you don't need to have them as the main stack. And that's something that I definitely do preach. I just don't do it enough. And
it's easy to not do it. It's easy because it's easy to just X out a team, right?
It's so easy
because then you don't have to worry about it. Because if you leave them in, then now you have to start going through and going like, does this, should I have Freddie Freeman here? Should I have Acuna there? Should I have?
You got to go make some groups so that you can avoid some certain guys together, and you can like you need to go in and you say, oh well, if I'm gonna have Garrett Cole, then I don't want to have also Ronald Acuna, and like all those different kinds of things.
And Xing them out and just excluding them, it just saves you that work.
Gets much more complex, but it's something. I mean, when it comes down to it, doing that work, if that work nets me an extra 1 or 2% profit by the end of the year, that's something. It probably takes me an extra 15 minutes per day once NBA season and NHL season is over. And you guys hear me say this all the time, because I'm a content creator. I'm handicapped when it comes to my MME builds and when it comes to my scripting. I'm pretty handicapped because I just don't have as much time as I would like. But if I had that extra 15 minutes and it could net me an extra 1 or 2% by the end of the season, I should probably start doing that because I like an extra 1 or 2% profit.
Lou Sinus asks, do you ever create more lineups than you have entered, say 300 lineups for 150 contests, and cut and paste some lineups from the bottom to give you more variance? There's no need to. Why?
I have known people that do that.
Just make 150 lineups. I don't understand why. I could understand doing this. I mean, there's a way to avoid doing this. If you were only building lineups with like only one unique player, like, because then the diversity of your lineups is very minimal. So
yeah.
But if it's a lineup builder is automatically going to be spitting it out by median fantasy point projection. So like, I'm building my best 150 lineups with the percentages that I want and the lineups that I want to make. So the 151st lineup is going to be why am I pasting in? Why would I build 300 lineups? And then when I already have a diversified enough set in the top 150 that I'd want anything from the bottom. I mean, like, the only difference between the lineups at the bottom 150 would be they look like your top 150 just with one player that has a 1.5 point projection lower. And it's like, well, if I already have enough leverage in the top 150, then what do I need the bottom lineups for? I'm already getting the lineups that I want to get.
Yeah.
So to me, there's no reason. Like, if you're able to build 150, whatever that said, it doesn't have to be 150. If you're able to build 20, right? You're building 20. What's 5% of 20? One lineup, right? So if you're able to get the lineups that you want in 20, why would you build 40 and then pick? Like,
it's just a randomization tactic. Where
why do you need it? Why do you need it? Just
I am just saying what I have heard people do. I don't personally see a reason to do it. I think that like the lineup towards the bottom, all you're trying to do is just, inject extra variance into the lineups that you're entering, but you really don't need to do that. If you build 150 lineups and you're building good lineups, those top 150 are likely going to be higher EV than the next 150, then the next 150, blah, blah, blah. All you're doing is just giving yourself an excuse to say, oh, well, these didn't do well, but it's because they were my worst.
Right. That's the thing, that if you're getting the diversification you want in the first 150, then what would be the reason to take
it's just random?
worse than
it's just a manual way of typing in rand, I guess. I don't see a reason for it. I personally would never do it, but I have known people that have done it when they have like a really, really large portfolio of like 600 lineups or whatever. But what they are really trying to do at that point is what Jordan was talking about earlier, and sorting through the Excel and entering those contests into different things, because they're not making 600 lineups and then taking 100 of those and then putting them into the 150 from the bottom. They're taking those 600 lineups and they have 600 contests regged. And then they are mixing and matching and pulling random chunks of those 600 lineups and putting them into the CSV in different ways. So I don't see a reason to do it when you have 150.
And lastly, Frederick, how much do you consider how far below a projected optimal lineup is before you cut it from your lineups? Meaning, if an optimal is 140 and you crunch and your generation, it gives you lineups at 90 to 110. Do you delete that? Well, if they have enough leverage, like if you're creating lineups that are that low projected, then you're having a problem creating lineups.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if people get so obsessed with this, how much, especially in baseball, how much, like in basketball, I can understand it. How much off the optimal lineup should I have?
We talk about that a lot. Yeah.
Right. There's no number. The number is the more that projection you give up, the more leverage you need to make up for that. So can you play a lineup that is 50 points lower projected than the top optimal stacked lineup? Yes, as long as you get the requisite ownership with it, right? Now, 50 points below, you probably need that lineup has like a lot of 1% owned players, and that would be a plus EV lineup. Just that is only going to win like once every like 10,000 slates. So like, how many of those lineups do you really want in your portfolio? Because like, those are like YOLO. Those are the most YOLO type of lineups that you could possibly have. But as long as you're getting the requisite leverage, the ownership lower on the lineup to make up for those points, especially in baseball. Remember, 14 points is a solo home run. So you could give up, can you get 3 solo home runs? That's 42 points. Okay. It's possible your lineup, you have a 1% owned stack that puts up 6 home runs in a game. You've made it up already, right? So you could be 50 points below the optimal with that lineup, as long as they're 1% owned. That team, all you have to do is change the percentages to 3 and 4% owned, and maybe giving up 50 points for that isn't what you're not getting enough leverage. So it's not the number of points. It's the points relative to the amount of ownership. Your goal in general is to find lineups and build lineups that have high projection with the ownership discount, right? If you see that a lineup that's going to be 200% owned in total, we use ownership sum, which isn't the best way to do it, but it's the easiest way. 200% owned and projects for a median of 140. And you could find a lineup that projects for 136, right? Or 137, which is like the matter of one base hit. 137 for 120% combined owned. Like, that's a lineup that now you found a lineup. Now you want to find as many lineups in that range, right? Sacrificing 3 points in projection and getting 80 points in ownership. How many of those lineups are there? Maybe there's 6 of them. Okay, I want those 6. Then you go, what's projected at 135? but gives me 115% ownership. Okay, how many? Like in theory, that's what you're doing. So hence the facet of you're not playing players, you're not playing teams, you're playing lineups. Now, obviously, in baseball, there's a correlation element to it, so you have to factor that in. But outside of that's your goal in DFS for any sport. Is can I play lineups that project well, that are going to be somehow lower owned? Now, the fields are not dumb where I can play the highest projected lineup that also is going to be the lowest owned. Like, no, the chalk is a reason. There's a reason the chalk is the chalk. But the difference between 2 points in baseball, 1 point in basketball, the ownership will be vastly different. The difference of 2 points in basketball, we'll see one guy be 45% owned and the other guy being 10% owned. Like, that gap shouldn't exist to that extent. In baseball, we'll see one guy with a 15-point median projection be 26% owned, and a guy with a 13.8-point projection be 6% owned. Because one guy's clearly the best play, and the other guy is 1.2 points lower and clearly like, eh. And then there's a lot of guys like that in that range, right? Yeah. Everyone's playing Acuna, but no one's playing Bellinger or Soto or Harper or whoever. And you're like, well, why should one guy be 4 times more owned? Well, they should be, because they do project better, but by the span of a run, right? Yeah. 2 points, the difference of like a run scored. So how many of those things can you find to build a lineup that puts that all together? That looks like, okay, this looks like almost as good as a lineup as this one, but it's going to be half as owned. Play those lineups. I mean, that's it. That's the simplest form of DFS for GPPs. And the amount of leverage that you need, the amount of ownership discount you need in your lineup is all relative to the size of the contest that you play. There you go. Then you match it up. It's not about picking players. It's not about picking teams. It's about building lineups that fit those variables. And now, obviously, ownership, you have to kind of project beforehand. I mean, that's kind of the skill. And here at RotoGrinders, we do have projected ownership. So you could sign up RotoGrinders Premium. Click the link in the description, get $10 off your first month. But you also have to mentally, because it's a human game. So someone could be projected for 17% owned and end up being 11% owned. It's like, okay, well, where did the rest of that ownership go? Well, obviously someone else is going to be higher owned. So kind of knowing human psychology helps. But really, you're building lineups. So you're not picking players. You're not saying who you're going to do well. You take a look at the projections that you have, that you made yourself or you subscribe to. That's a reasonably accurate model. And how can I put these pieces together in ways that other people aren't doing that still project well enough, and just people are more likely to go, oh, I'm going to play the high total team and do this. Like, well, turns out with all these puzzle pieces, I could put pieces from here, 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 and here and get a lineup very close to that less people are playing, right? And then how many of those types of lineups can I put together? And that's it. And if it turns out that you get 16% of this guy and 22% of that guy by doing that, then then it is what it is. That's how the math and the pieces come together. But you could understand, James, that like that thinking that non-linearly can be tough for most people.
Yeah, we've talked about it on this podcast or on the show before, or where we've talked about linear thinking is something that most people do. Non-linear thinking, where you're pulling a whole bunch of levers at once, rather than saying, I'm going to do this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing in order, doing all of them at once. That it's hard. It is really, really hard. It's hard to multitask, and it's hard to get in that mental state. It takes a lot of practice to be able to see all those things at once, because most people can't even see the next decision that they're going to make after the first one. It's like playing chess. Most chess players just make a move and then they react to the next move. Master chess players know what's going to happen 7 moves ahead. So you have to be able to see those things together, and you have to be able to make decisions all at once rather than one by one. And a lot of people struggle with that. So I think that is where most people are going to fall apart when they're trying to build lineups, that they get tied up over 1v1s or 2v2s, or like, you like this player more than that player. And it's like, Then flip a coin, dude. Like, it's gonna be okay, whichever one you choose. If you choose Freeman or Azuna in your Brave stack, then one of them might hit a home run. I don't know, but they're in a good spot. So picking one of them is probably right. Picking both of them is maybe right, but it just matters in the lineup you pick. It doesn't matter.
And we talk about that in the course, 15 hours. So if you want structured education, we talk about stuff like this throughout the entire course. The theory of daily fantasy sports, how to think like a professional DFS player, 15 hours of audio. Theoryofdfs.com. James, you're at paydirt_DFS, paydirtdfs.com, right? If people want to check out your model and your work.
Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at paydirt_DFS. You can find all my models at paydirtdfs.com. Today, we are also actually completing a combo. There's another site that has been offering projections called Point Source that is now going to be found at Paydirt as well. So if you have been interested in either one of those things, come on over, come join the fun, come join the
and you're doing esport. You have Valorant and DOTA.
I got projections for everything. I mean, literally, like, I've got projections for Dota 2. I've got projections for Counter-Strike. I've got projections for Call of Duty, projections for League of Legends, projections for baseball, projections for basketball. I mean, everything that you could need. I promise, for whatever sport you're playing, you can find it over at paydirtdfs.com.
Okay, so I don't know tomorrow. I don't know what I'm reviewing tomorrow, because am I going to review a 2-game slate that's today? I don't know, but we'll be talking about stuff it'll be a normal slate tomorrow. But that's what I do on this show. Going over DFS strategy, reviewing past slates, going through the tools here that we have at RotoGrinders, how to build better lineups, become a more profitable player. Mondays through Fridays, 11 o'clock Eastern, on the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.